So what is the momentum of MSTY? Is it up, down, flat? And how is this distribution rate shown on the website calculated? And what does it mean? Hello my friends, this is Legend. So today we're going to look at the overall momentum of MSTY and just kind of get a big picture of MSTY along with Mr. And also the distribution rate, as you're seeing here, it is going down, right? It was in the 90s and now it's in the 80s. So let's just take a look at that and see how that's calculated so that we can understand what this actually represents and mean when it's going down. So let's just go ahead and we'll start right off with how this distribution rate is calculated, what numbers are involved into this calculation, and we can double check to see and understand what this 88.84% distribution rate actually represents. So to do that, we're going to slide over to my spreadsheet and just punch it in. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to punch in some numbers into these three slots, and it's going to calculate what that distribution rate actually is for these values. And I'm going to show you where these values are coming from so that we can better understand what that actually is. So let's just go ahead and we'll start off with the recent distribution. And we're going to use MSTY as the example here. So just so that we remember and you can see, I'm just going to type in MSTY here just so that if you look back on this, you'll know which ETF I'm using. So this is for MSTY. So the last and the most recent distribution, it was $1.47. But let's get what that exact number was. All right, so here we are on the MSTY website. And we can scroll right on down here to the distribution details. And as you can see, the last one was $1.4707. So we're going to punch that in. So 1.4707 right here. Now, how many payouts does Mr. pay in a year? Well, we'll pull over the calculator, and I'm sure 99% of you already know how many payouts, but just for the new people, we know that MSTY pays out every 4 weeks. And since there's 52 weeks in the year, we can simply say 52 weeks divided by the 4 payouts will give us a total of 13 payments. So we're going to enter in 13 into that cell right here, 13 payments. Now, what's the recent NAV? And to find that out, we can look on our Webull chart and it will tell us what that most recent NAV is. Here we are on the Webull chart, and as you can see, we are looking at MSTY here, and I can look at the NAV right here, and as you can see, it says 21.52. So $21.52 is the NAV, and that's the most recent NAV. Now you can also look on the website, but I'm not sure how quickly that is updated, but I'll show you where it is on the website as well. So again, looking on the YieldMax ETF website for MSTY, I just scroll all the way down to the fund data and pricing right here. And as you can see, NAV 21.52. So currently this one is the most recent, but again, this all depends on how quickly this site is updated. So it's better to actually pull it from whatever stock charts that you're using if it does give that NAV. And I use Webull, and as you can see, this one here, this will be the most recent. All right, so 21.52, and we'll enter that into our sheet. We'll enter it into the most recent NAV of 21.52. Now, once we enter that, that's going to calculate our distribution rate, and that gives us an 88.84%. And let's just go back to the website and let's just see if the two match. So 88.84%. And here we are on the YieldMax ETF website for MSTY, and we've got 88.84%. So that shows you exactly how it's calculated And now let's just better understand what are those numbers. Now that we have those two confirmed, that we are calculating it correctly, let's just better understand what those numbers are. So on our sheet here, as you can see, we do have that most recent NAV, we have the current number of payments per year, and we've got the most recent distribution. As you can see, though this number is changing, and it was, like I said a few days ago, was around 93%. And why was that? And why is it down to 88%? Well, it's pretty simple. These numbers over here, the NAV and the distribution rates change, right? Well, we know the distribution rate is not going to change until those 4 weeks are up and it pays out the new distribution. Okay, so for those 4 weeks, this number doesn't change. And the 13 payments, well, we know that doesn't change because it pays out every 4 weeks. So the only number that can possibly change during those 4 weeks is the recent NAV. So which way has the ETF been moving? Has it been moving down? Has it been moving up? Or just staying sideways? Well, obviously it's not staying the same, or else that distribution rate would still be at 93. But what causes that to change? The NAV. Now let's just look at the chart and see which way the actual movement has been going for MSTY. Okay, so we're back on the Webull chart for MSTY, and here's our distribution right here. And as you can see, it's that $47.07, okay? And it closed right here at the bottom of this red candle. Because it's red means it went down, and it's full all the way down to this point because that's where it closed for that day. So let's just see, has it been going up, down, or sideways? I think it's pretty obvious to see, but I'm going to draw a line just to help visually see it. So I go here, I'll click the trend line, and then we're just going to click somewhere right there close to that bottom, and then I'm just going to extend it right up to this close, and that close with the bottom of that red candle, right? Boom. So as you can see, it's proof that overall, since the distribution, and this is looking at the actual movement of those candles and the price. This is not the adjusted chart where it's just showing a lot more of the momentum of the play. This is the actual movement of the price reflective in the candles. So as you can see, that price is moved up from that $20.27 up to the close of this day of $21.41. So that's nothing new. We all know that. But it has been going up in price. So now let's go back to our sheet and let's take that thought and add that into trying to figure out how that percentage moves. Okay, so back on our spreadsheet here, and we know that from the beginning when this was first paid out, it was closer to that $20.50, right? It was actually at 2027. So if I entered in 2027 right here, let's just see what does that do to our distribution rate. So 20.27, meaning the price was lower. So do you think that means that the calculated distribution rate is going to be lower as well? Well, let's just see. No, actually it was higher, which does make sense because remember, we were looking at that distribution rate on the website and it was around that 93. So that means that when we were looking at that, or when it was calculated, it was around that $20 and maybe say 50 cents. So let's just punch that in, and there you go, $20.50, and that puts it at 93 distribution rate percent. So that is making sense now. So as this price of MSTY is increasing and the distribution rate is the same for that period of time, then this distribution rate that's being calculated is going to decrease, because as this price and the NAV of MSTY increases from $20.50 to $21, boom, now we're at 91, and then to $22, boom, 86. So see, this is decreasing. So when you look at it on the website right here, and you're seeing this distribution rate decrease, you may think, oh man, this thing is dropping, right? Well, that's not necessarily true. All that means is if that is the same period as that first distribution, it just means the price of MSTY or of that ETF is increasing. Therefore, the rate at which that distribution here that you've earned is becoming a smaller portion of what the stock price is, if that makes sense. So basically, if this NAV was at $20, then $1.50 is more of a percentage of that $20, right? It's a bigger piece of that $20 pie. But if this NAV is $30 and this is $1.50, then that's a very smaller piece of pie, right? Because now you've got $30 total and you're only going to take out $1.50 of it. So that percentage of that 30 is smaller. And as that price increases, the distribution rate for this time period of that distribution payout rate decreases. So this gets smaller. Now, how does it change? Well, there's only two numbers that can change. And of course, as we stated, that's the NAV and that's the distribution. So if this distribution rate increases or decreases, then that will change our calculated distribution rate for the website. So at the current NAV of 21.52, we know that 88.84% is what's shown on the website. But say our distribution for the next period is lower. If it is lower, and say it went to $1.25, and if we punch in $1.25, let's see what that does for that distribution rate. And as you know, and as you suspected, it dropped, right? Because that's a smaller piece of that 21.52 here. All right. But if that would happen to increase above what we paid out before, and before we had the $1.47, if that were to happen to increase to $1.75, then we're going to see the distribution rate increase because that is now a larger piece of that $21.52. Now, keep in mind, of course, you do have these two that are changeable. This one is changeable every 4 weeks, but this one is changeable per day. So as this price of the NAV decreases or increases, that will affect what is shown on the website for the calculated distribution rate. So really, to fully understand what that distribution rate that is shown on that website is, you do have to understand what numbers are involved in that number. Because as you do change one and the other, it can change that distribution rate. Because say, taking it back to that $47.07 of what it was, if the price of MSTY and the NAV dropped, and say this fell all the way down to $15, right? So the price of MSTY drops. Boom. We now are showing a distribution rate of 127%. So a lot of people see that on the website and they get all excited. And that is good because that $1.47 is a larger piece of that $15. But if you were in it at a higher NAV or a higher price per share, then maybe you're not so happy the fact that it is down to $15. Now, granted, we're in it for the distributions, not necessarily the price appreciation, but I don't necessarily want to see this price appreciation and the price of MSTY drop and keep dropping, because as this would go down, then overall the amount per distribution would also decrease, because that would then become a very large portion of what that price per share would be. So the two do still have to be in relation with each other, because you can't pay out a $7 distribution for a $10 stock, right? Because when that distribution comes out of the price of the stock on X date, that would mean a $10 stock or ETF, and the $7 comes out of it, it would be a $3 stock. Well, that's not going to last very long, and that's why the distributions would be adjusted as that price of the stock and ETF would go or would change to keep the two in relation with each other. Now, same thing as if the stock price goes up and it goes up to $25 per share, then it's very possible that the distributions could then increase. Not saying they would. They could stay low, stay the same. It just really depends on the implied volatility of MSTR itself. If it can keep the high IV, then they can make those nice juicy premiums, which then helps pay us our distributions. But on a $25 NAV, then say you would get $2. Now you're looking at 104% with that NAV at $25. So I did write out how that's actually calculated right here. And to also, just to make it a little bit more visible, let me move this so it's easier to see on the screen. And there you go. So now you can see that the calculated distribution rate is equal to the most recent distribution per share times the number of distributions per share divided by the ETF's most recent NAV. And that's how this is actually calculated. And that's how they calculate it on the website. So I think understanding what this number actually is, I think that is very vital, because that is only according to the last distribution, right? That is not necessarily a running number of what it could possibly be, but that is actually just what the distribution rate is according to the current NAV and the past distribution per share. So I hope that kind of cleans that up and helps you to understand how that's actually calculated and what it actually means, because you really need to understand the numbers that are used to calculate this, as I think a lot of people see this and think, I am going to make 88% per year on this YieldMax ETF for MSTY. And you could, right? I'm not saying you won't. I'm just saying that you have to understand what this actually is telling you. It is trying to project it out, but the fact that the distributions are not the same amount each time, it makes this number very volatile, and it does change per day. So now let's just go over to the Webull chart, and let's just quickly take a look at the overall of MSTY. And let's see, overall, does it have positive or negative momentum for the ETF itself? So here we are back on the Webull chart, and we're looking at MSTY, and I still have the actual turned on. But to see what the momentum is, we'll flip that chart from actual to the adjusted chart, as that does play more into the momentum of the actual ETF. So we'll just go here, we'll click it to adjusted, and then there we go. So now you're looking at more of the momentum of MSTY. This is not the actual price, but the momentum, because as you can see, you see a price over here of $7.53, but MSTY has never been at $7.53, and that is because this is more of momentum, right? So it takes into account of the distributions and everything like that. So it readjusts the chart to help more, I guess, smooth it out. But overall, you can see that it has overall a positive momentum. It is moving upward. We can easily take a line here, and we can draw this line straight up through here and drop it right there to the end. And as you can see, that is a nice move upward on that line. So it does have overall an upward trend to the ETF. Again, this is not the price. You cannot look at this and see, oh, wow, You could have bought it down here and sold it up here and made all of this price appreciation. No, you could not, because this is not the price movement. This is only the momentum of the stock and ETF itself. The price, we turn it back to the actual, and you can see overall it is pretty flat on the price. We are a little bit above where it came out at the very beginning, because at the very beginning it did come out around that $20.38, and we're at $21.41. So it is up for the entire period of MSTY, but that's not the question here. We wanted to see overall the momentum of MSTY, and the momentum of it in itself is up. So that is a very positive thing, and I love to see that. And how about Mr.? Is the momentum of Mr. moving up? Well, Mr. does not pay a distribution, so it's not going to really offset it from the original price movement to any kind of other chart view, because the actual and adjusted for Mr. will be the same, because it has no distributions or dividends. So here, as you can see, we're looking at Mr. And again, we can draw that line from here, and we can draw it right up to the end up here. And I don't know about you, but that looks like an upward momentum play to me as well. And that's what we need for Mr. to help boost MSTY. Now, the only thing that has really slowed us down here as of late is just the fact that the IV for Mr. has calmed down, right? It has been trading sideways for a bit here. And that, of course, can be great if you're going to buy and sell in and out of Mr. You can sit here and play this range, right? And just sell, buy, right? Every time it gets to the top, you can sell it. Every time it drops down to the bottom, you can buy it. And I'm not suggesting that you do that, but I'm just saying when it stays range bound like this, the problem is it does lower that implied volatility. And when the implied volatility drops, then when you look at Mr. and you start looking at the options, you start seeing that the premiums start dropping as well. And as those premiums drop, then YieldMax really doesn't have the opportunity to earn those big, fat, juicy premiums to help pay out those big distributions. Now, all of this is my opinion, as I do not work for YieldMax, nor am I doing any trading with YieldMax. That's all on them. But I'm just showing you what we can look at. And we can look at the option chain, and we can see they don't really have a whole lot to pick from to get any kind of really juicy premiums. Now, we can go out to, say, July 18th. And as you can see here, I mean, there's some premium, but there's not much, right? I mean, there's just not really a whole lot that they can get. Now, that's the put side. And you go to the call side, and it's even a bit worse, right? Because we can look at the implied volatility here. And as you can see, even for July 18th, we're looking at a 28 and a 26 here. So the implied volatility for these trades at these strikes are pretty low. And as they are low, distributions would be low. And that is mostly just because Mr. has been trading sideways. And we know Mr.'s been trading sideways because Bitcoin has been somewhat range bound as well. And you notice it's a lot in that same area, right? Just been kind of trading sideways, not really sure which way it's going. And that's okay, because you can't always have a stock or an ETF or even Bitcoin to continually do this, right? It just doesn't happen. You got to have your cool off periods. You got to have your trade sideways periods. And what we don't like to see, but you also have to have your down days and down weeks at times, right? But of course, if you are in it for the long haul, when you get those down days, that could be a good time to buy some more to help dollar cost average. But it all depends on how you are playing these plays. So overall, as you can see, MSTY, momentum-wise, is going up. So that's great. And also keep in mind, this coming week is distribution week. And that means that X date for MSTY will be Thursday. Wednesday, they will announce their distribution amount. Thursday will be the X date, meaning that if you do not own those shares before that Thursday, you will not earn that distribution for that payout. And then Friday will be payday. So I just wanted to kind of really get everybody to understand what that distribution rate means and how it's calculated on the website. And then just to take a step back and look at the overall big picture of MSTY. And just to understand momentum-wise, is this tracking up or down? And momentum-wise, we're tracking up. So for me, that's a positive thing. And that's why I am still in MSTY. And my real cost average, and that's my adjusted price per share average, as you've seen here on my spreadsheet, is at $3.97. So that's all the distributions I need in order to have gained all of my original capital back. And that's just $3.97 more needed. And then all of my shares will be paid off for MSTY, and I'll be earning those distributions free and clear. And of course, if you're interested in this spreadsheet, it is located in the description below this video. So check that out if you're interested. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind hitting the subscribe button, smash the like button. It'd be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, legend out.